I'm going to do a call to order. Mo, would you like to initiate that?
Sure. Good evening, Commissioners. Whoa. Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Reed. Commissioner R. Curry. Commissioner Maya.
Here.
Commissioner Grabman will be tardy. Vice Chair Glazier.
Here.
And Chair Houghton.
Here. Thank you.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Hastert, do we have any changes to the agenda?
Chair Houghton, no changes to the agenda.
Thank you very much. So notices that on Wednesday, Friday, March 1st, 2024 at 5 p.m., Airport Commission Secretary Mo Graham duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at Airport Administration. I have 3 public comment slips. And Mo, you don't have any others, do you? Okay. So are there any other comments by our group? I guess not. We'll go with the first 3. Each speaker may speak for 3 minutes, and Mo will run a timer for that. I'm going to start off with Mr. Larry Rosen. The topic is the city T hanger rents. Please.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioners, Mr. Hastert, thank you. This is previews of coming attractions. We've sent a proposal. I'm with my buddy Jack Hine. We're 2 of the 22 tenants in the city T hangars. And we have sent a proposal to each of you and to Mr. Hastert. So we'll look forward to discussing this at greater length when you are ready to take up the item. I just wanted to give you a preview. We're proposing to adjust the rental rates for the T hangars on the happy occasion of the city not having to pay $219,000 a year in debt service to the state of California. So the city borrowed that money to build the hangars about 15 years ago, and the cost of the debt service was largely passed along to the tenants of the T hangars, which was appropriate, of course. It made sense. It did push the city T hangar rents about 40% above the median of hangar rental in the 6 other area airports. The original tenants of the city T hangars were told at the time that this loan was made, the debt service was incurred as an obligation, that all of this would be reevaluated when the debt service was satisfied. Well, happily, that time is now. We know you are quite ready to reevaluate this, and we hope you'll consider our proposal as you do. Our proposed reduction for our rents would bring the city T hangar rents within 10% of the median of rents at other airports for hangars. We'd be at the top, not the top end, we'd be at the higher end of that. And if you agree with our proposal to reduce our rents accordingly, the city is still going to reap the benefits of $141,000 in savings from the debt service, which is a substantial amount, we think. If you need more information, I'm happy to provide it. I'm representing our little coalition of tenants, and be happy to speak on their behalf and consult with them if you need information from them as well. And we look forward to talking with you about this at greater length later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosen. I also want to thank you, too, for your very articulate and well-orchestrated letter.
I am articulate. It's all you have to do is agree, and everything will be fine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'd like to hear from Thomas Hine. Please come up. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. I'm Thomas. I'm a supervisor at American. Today I would like to highlight 4 important concerns about the commercial terminal. On behalf of passengers and employees at SBA, the following improvements are crucial to ensure the safety, security, and comfort of all. First and foremost would be the baggage claim area. The current baggage claim is not only unsafe but extremely impractical. It may have been feasible when SBA was receiving regional jets with just under 60 passengers, but that's no longer the case. It is time for SBA to install a real baggage claim conveyor belt system, just as in every other airport. SBA's motto is depart differently, but what about arriving? We've had both employees and passengers injure themselves and commit security violations. Next would be the JetBridge 1 ground power unit. It is extremely frustrating for over 2 years, the airport has refused to fix the JetBridge 1 ground power unit cord. Not only does it prevent airlines from providing aircraft with ground power, but this failure of service also creates an environmental concern. If the ground power unit is not functioning, the aircraft must run its auxiliary power unit, burning more fuel than necessary, sometimes upwards of an hour or 2 at the gate. When the aircraft requires ground power, we must use an external mobile cart to power the aircraft, which also uses fuel. Next concern would be the Gate 1 and Gate 5 lighting. Another glaring safety issue that needs to be addressed is the ramp lighting at Gate 1, Gate 5B, and Gate 5C. There are areas on the ramp where it is pitch black, endangering ramp crew members servicing the aircraft and passengers at Gate 5 while ground boarding. We've had both employees and passengers injure themselves due to this inhibited visibility. Next would be the public address system. Flying through other airports demonstrates just how inept the PA system here at SBA is. The PA system is set to all paged, so gate agents talk to the whole airport, blocking other airlines from using the PA and confusing passengers. When gate agents do attempt to use their specific gate, it isn't loud enough or doesn't work. This leads to gate agents not performing required safety and regulatory announcements, which could result in fines from the FAA. This also results in passengers being confused and unable to differentiate the announcements that matter to them. The PA system being on the gate's wall instead of on the counter is clear security risk and does result in delayed flights and security violations. This results in agents either yelling or neglecting to say anything at all, once again creating an unpleasant and unprofessional appearance for passengers. This gives the motto, depart differently, a different meaning. These failures highlight SBA's lack of awareness when creating airport improvements. Why are these items absent from the airport master plan? I feel as SBA could collaborate with airlines more consistently and directly when implementing new changes and improvements to work together to make SBA a safer and more efficient airport for passengers and employees alike.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hahn. Well said. Last but not least, we have Donald DeLuccio for the Planning Commission. Please come by and reintroduce yourself.
Thank you. I think I'll be really brief, and you already said it already. I'm Donald DeLuccio, member of the Santa Barbara Planning Commission. It's my second year. I'm going to get more involved this year and come to more of your meetings. And actually, the master plan is coming to the Planning Commission tomorrow. And so I looked over the report, but I'm really anxious to hear the comments of the commissioners. So as part of our deliberation tomorrow, we could pass that information on to the other commissioners. So thank you.
Thank you. Mo, have we received any more speaker comment cards? All right, we will then proceed on to the liaison reports. And delighted to see Councilmember Eric Friedman here. Councilmember, would you have an update or a report?
Good evening, everyone. Eric Friedman, City Council, Santa Barbara City Council. Not much to report at this time, just that this past Tuesday, Tuesday, which was yesterday, seems like a lot longer ago, we had a budget workshop all morning from starting at 9 o'clock and went through our finances. We're doing it slightly different this year in terms of the budget. So we had all the departments present, but they came in really concise and they talked about some of their achievements and then some of the challenges and then the budgets going forward. And so the airport did present, and a lot of that will be in the information on tonight. So that's the kind of the big news on that. And that's really all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman. All right, moving along. I'd like to call on Director Hastert to provide us with an update with his airport director report.
Thank you, Chair Houghton and Commission members. Just a few items on the list since we consolidated meetings together. So there's been a few things that have happened. Some unfortunate things I'll hit on first. One is we had a sewage spill that you've probably seen in the news on our property, not directly related to any lines that we maintain. But I just wanted to assure you that our staff is on top of that situation, including any future work that needs to be done on that line and repressurization to make sure that something like that does not happen again. We still have a lot of concerns about some of the aging infrastructure that goes across our property through easements with some of our partners. And this was unfortunate, but we will continue to monitor the situation and respond accordingly. As you have seen, and with the rain today, it's we're getting a little bit nervous anytime it rains. We actually flooded again and closed the airport for a day. We'll talk about this a little bit when we get to the master plan. We have some drainage studies being done, but I'm happy to report that with Masiza working with County Flood Control, they have identified a potential short-term solution that we have our consultant looking at to make sure that it is a viable solution that won't cause problems elsewhere. And we hope to hear next week from them whether that is a good solution or not. So hopefully, if everything goes well, we will have a fix in place to hopefully prevent future shutdowns of the airfield. Sorry, Councilmember Friedman, you probably could have mentioned this one as well, and I forgot to remind you about it, but there was a selection made for our city administrator. So we have a new city administrator coming on board in May. Her name is Kelly McAdoo, and I'm pleased to let you know that she's coming from the city of Hayward, which does have an airport under her currently. So she's familiar with how airports operate. It's a commercial, not commercial service airport, but a vibrant general aviation airport. So I think that we're off to a good start with our new city administrator. We had the plane pull this last weekend, and it was very successful. It was a good event for Alpha Resources, but just wanted to acknowledge this year Alaska Airlines went all in, and they did a disability flight experience the morning of the plane pull, which enabled people with disabilities or parents of children with disabilities to come experience what it's like to travel through the airport to see if it's something that they would be able to do on their own to actually take a trip. So they went all the way through from the ticket counter, through security, boarded the airplane, taxied around the airport for a little while, did a little beverage service, and back to the gate and offloaded. And it went very well. I think there's probably some families out there that are willing to go on a trip now, understanding that they can handle the situation with whatever their disabilities may be. As Councilmember Friedman mentioned, we did have the budget kickoff. That went very well. Not a lot of questions for the airport. With all of our activity, things are going well for the airport and our enterprise fund. We had a meeting this morning with Delta Airlines. They are still on track to start up their service in June, and we're going over some of the specifics for IT today. And they have also identified their ground handling company, so we will have Unify here as a third ground handling company. Sarah's team with Jessica Metzger has been helping me to finally get the noise working group kicked off. So we had a good meeting with the city of Goleta to start to establish how we will appoint members to that noise working group, and we will be working with the county as well. I know it's been a long time coming, but you can expect in April, hopefully, to hear more information about the General Western Aero hangars and what that future will look like and what our approach to those facilities that need a lot of work will be. I attended California Aviation Day. Now I'm remembering which day it is, like Councilmember Friedman. I believe it was last Tuesday, but I would have to look at my calendar and see. But it was a very successful event. Aviation is definitely alive and strong and doing well, and there's a lot of really cool companies out there doing good things with electrification, flight schools, museums, a lot of different groups that displayed right on the steps of the Capitol, including an actual light sport aircraft on the steps of the Capitol. How they got it there, I don't know. But I look forward to participating in that for future years. It's grown into California Aviation and Aerospace Days now, so not just aviation. We do have a series of master plan meetings coming up, which we'll talk about a little bit more, but for those members of the public that are interested, we do have a public meeting tomorrow night at the Elwood Elementary School. Which time is it? 6 to 8 p.m. And so we'll be talking about that more as we go through the master plan presentation today. And last but not least, the one position that we have not filled with a permanent basis is our property manager position. We currently have John Feldhans in an acting role. That position has now been posted for recruitment, and we're hopeful that John and other qualified candidates will apply for that, and we will maintain good management going forward in our properties division.
Thank you, Director Hastert. Quite the report. And I have to say, I'm just so pleased to see a company like Alaska Air going the extra mile for the disabled kids out there. I mean, that's an extraordinary memory for them, and hopefully it will encourage those families to fly out of SBA. And I'm excited to hear as well as the General Western Aero Hangars project moving forward. Very optimistic about that. So thank you. Commissioners, any comments? Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, I realize we can't have a discussion on this, not being an agenda item, but I was curious, have the terminal issues that were raised by public comment previously been presented to airport administration, or are these new issues?
So there are, of the 4 issues, I was aware of a few of them, but not all of them. So I will be looking into that with staff. And then some things like the PA system are a longstanding issue that we definitely have to do quite a bit of work on to make that change, but definitely all in the works.
All right. And I don't recall in the terminal update or whatever expansion, are there already plans underway to make changes to the baggage area? I know we saw a presentation several months ago, but I don't recall.
So our terminal improvement project is online for the public to see. The current concept does not have a baggage belt in it, but it does have an expanded space for baggage claim. But I will definitely take this comment back to our team and see if that's something that should be looked into a little bit further.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioner.
Thank you. Just thinking about the report that we are going to receive in April about the hangars, is a cost estimate for possible scenarios included? Okay. I'll be interested in seeing that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Glazier. Commissioner Maya, any comments? All right. We'll move on. The next section of our meeting is the consent calendar. And we have 6 items on our consent calendar. Now, in the past, I used to have to read these and we'd go over them step by step, but now we basically take them en masse. And I'm certain that the commissioners have all took a look at the various lease agreements, like with AgRx and Pacific Coast Tree Experts, Parker Clay, Paul Taylor, and Wow Gear. Do we have any questions or clarifications by the commissioners? All right. Mo, have we received any additional public speaking forms?
I would make a motion then to accept the consent calendar as presented.
And I would like to call for a vote. All in favor?
I'll second.
Okay, all right, thank you. The motion did pass. Okay, we're moving to administrative reports. Administrative reports in the fiscal year 2024 mid-year financial report. And Director Hastert, I'll ask you to make the introductions here.
Thank you, Chair Houghton. I would like to ask Jonathan Abad to give the presentation on our second quarter financial review.
Thank you very much, Director Hastert, and good evening, Chair Houghton and members of the Commission and the public. My name is Jonathan Abad. I'm the business manager for the Santa Barbara Airport. And tonight I'll be going over the fiscal year 2024 second quarter financial review. Okay. Starting off, Santa Barbara Airport hit another record annual passenger count of 1.3 million passengers ending fiscal 23. That's in June 2023. Up about 150,000 from 1.1 million ending fiscal 22. Going down the line, we've got our commercial industrial revenues up almost 15%. Skipping down a little bit, non-commercial aviation up about 1.5%. You'll notice commercial aviation terminal revenues, they're showing about 1.5 and 3.4% down. That's mainly due to timing, and let me explain a little bit of that. Much of the revenues from these sources are based on month-end reporting that's due to us on the 15th of every month. But our GL closes around between 11th and 14th every month. So there's going to be some timing issues that some December revenues would have been recorded in January. So accounting for those differences, that's what happened here with the commercial aviation and terminal revenues, showing down 1.5 and 3.4 when actually the terminal revenues are up 2.2%, and the commercial aviation revenues are actually up 3.8% in reality once we received all the revenues. And again, going down more details with the terminal revenues. Like I mentioned, it's really up 2.2%, not the 3.41% that you're seeing there. Rental cars are actually only down about 1%. Concessions are actually up almost 1%, 0.8. Other revenues, that includes ground transportation, it's actually up 12.7% after we actually received all the reports. Overall terminal lease revenues are actually up 2.2% versus the minus 3.41% reduction there. So similarly, again, like I said, for commercial aviation, we got some timing issue there. And so going down the line there, building leases about flat. Landing fee is actually up 18%. And other income includes remain overnight, freight landing, boarding fees. It's only off about 2%. And overall, commercial aviation is actually up 3.8% instead of that down 1.73% you're seeing there. Next, we got let's see, slide number 5. Non-commercial aviation, overall, revenues are up about 6%. Building rents about flat. Landing fees up about 53%. And fuel surcharges up about 25%. Here we have the pie, kind of give you an idea of where our revenues are coming from and what share it's where they're coming from. Combined with the terminal and commercial aviation, makes up about 61% of the total revenue. That's all airline-related kind of revenue, and the remaining 39% comes from the commercial, industrial, and the general aviation side. And going down overall, our revenue showing there 9.6% increase. And like I said, with the timing issue with the commercial and aviation and the terminal revenues, the total revenue is actually up 12.5%. And let me see a couple of variances there. Transfer in, you'll see about $400,000 that didn't exist before. That's the customer facility charges that we started receiving late last year, around May or so. That's kind of reimbursing us back for half of the Southfield redevelopment. And let's see, special projects, you'll see a little bit of a jump there. Little increased cost in PFAS and parking shuttle expenses. And let's see, we'll go to the next slide. After the operating expenditures, salaries and benefits, about 6.5% up from the same period last year. Materials, supplies, and services, you're seeing about 10% there. Note on that line item, About $216,000 of that $358,000 variance in the materials, supplies, and services is actually from the allocated costs, and that's the costs that the airport pays the city for services such as IT, fleet, sustainability, some basic services. Makes up about half of that cost, but it's actually making up a little more than half of the variance increase there. So if you break that out, the supplies and services actually only went up about 7%, and the allocated cost went up 15% if you break that down. Then we have the ARF, that's the firefighting, up about 12%. Engineering, you're seeing a large increase there. That's due to the fact that in fiscal 24, there's a little change in that we moved one of the positions from our salaries and benefits line item down to the engineering. It's a citywide change, kind of realigning services. Engineering is being provided to us by another department, Public Works. There's also a couple of other positions involved. We have a couple of positions provided by the information technology that's coming from the salaries and benefits, moving off to the transfer out line item in this particular case. And went over that. And so overall, expenses are up about 7% this mid-fiscal year compared to last fiscal year. But that's $900,000 increase. Okay. So far, under the actual fiscal 2024, we've received about $1.6 million in revenue than what we've spent so far this year. You'll see in the bottom right there, 53% year-to-date expenditure. That includes encumbrance compared to the budget. And without the encumbrances, we've actually only spent 42% of the budget this mid-year so far. So now, give you an idea, if you're looking at the revised budget column there, if we did spend and receive everything just as budgeted, you'll see that we'd actually dip in about $1.3 million from our reserves. But that's not likely, as we normally roll over $1 million worth of contracts encumbrances over to the next year, so we don't spend it all in this year. And we also find some savings at the end of the year. We close some encumbrances that we don't need anymore. Operating, just to give you an idea, operating fund has about $13 million in total reserves. $5.1 million of that is above policy as of ending fiscal 23. That's just to give you an idea in case you're curious. So now I'm going to go over some major operating accomplishments and milestones at mid-year. Starting with the administration division, this includes the properties program and marketing. And let's see, the commercial industrial revenues are up 15% same period last year, and significant growth. Although still understaffed, over the past years, the properties staffing have been most stable I've seen since I started here over 3 years ago, as it went through a lot of turnovers in the past. They've been real busy. They're also managing the replacement of all the parking equipment right now. They're all getting replaced. For the marketing, they launched diverse and innovative initiatives with focus on accessibility and customer experience, culminating in receiving a mayor's award for excellence in accessibility a few months ago there. For the facilities maintenance, they successfully replaced the heating HVAC system at the boarding bridges and at hangar offices. Repainted both parallel runways, ensuring operational safety. replaced lighting with energy-efficient LEDs in both long and short-term parking lots, terminal loop roads, and rental car-ready return lot. That should result in some noticeable reduction in electric bills. For operations and law enforcement, the elevated ARF capabilities is going to meet, elevated the ARF capabilities to meet our index being raised from B to C following increase in airline traffic of larger planes being used. And they've also, for airport security aides are now fully staffed, and this is boosting the security posture of the terminal. And for capital support, they've completed the 6100 Hollister solar repair and terminal boiler replacement. Southfield redevelopment is in progress. Terminal design is at 10% and master plan update draft is finalized. And they're working with the space planning for the arrival of the Delta Airlines. Finalized the terminal crosswalk design, completed ADA parking upgrades, making good progress on the FBO redevelopment and awarded the $5.5 million contract for the airfield marking signage and lighting project. So they've been very busy here as well. And close it off, just want to highlight that these accomplishments reflects the airport's dedication to operational excellence, sustainability, and strategic growth. Thank you very much, and I'm here for questions.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Abad. A very comprehensive presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we are joined by Commissioner Grabman. Welcome from Eagle, Colorado. It's all right. We thank you for letting us know. So, Commissioner Maya.
Yes, Mr. Abad, thanks for the great presentation. I think we're seeing in the numbers as well as just experience here at the airport that the airport's growing quickly and that you and your team are doing the best to keep up with that growth. I'm happy tonight that we're going to be looking at the master plan, but I had a question about, I noticed just popped out of me on page 3, concessions, restaurant, and gift shop. I'm not sure, you may have mentioned one of your hypotheses about why that was down 18%, but I don't recall.
Excuse me. Yeah, the concessions, restaurants, they're a large part of the revenue that comes from their percentage rents are sent to us in a report after the month ends.
Was that one of those where there was
Yes.
an overlap? Okay.
That's correct.
Just from personal experience, flying in and out of the airport, I was there last weekend on a Saturday, and the restaurant was closed at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and I wondered if we have any kind of requirements for minimum service for the concessionaires that we allow inside the airport?
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, so the restaurant's supposed to be open, I think 6:30 to 8, but the kitchen closes at 6. So I can follow up with the owner and see.
Oh, I'm sorry, this
see
was
what's going on
AM.
there. AM, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be open 6 a.m. till 9.
Till 9, okay.
Yeah, and then but I can follow up with her and see why it was closed. She's pretty good about keeping track of all that.
Okay, very good, yeah. Just wondering because as we get more passengers, as people come in, if we have a restaurant that's closed on and it's not terribly busy on weekend mornings, but people kind of expect some minimum level of service while they're in the airport, trapped and hungry. And I wondered if that maybe had anything to do with the 18% decrease, but it sounds like not. It may just be a fluke. So, thank you.
Commissioners, any additional comments?
I had a question, and thanks again for the presentation. I thought I heard you say that landing fees were up 53%. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's correct. Particularly, I think it's a non-commercial aviation general landing fees. Up 53%. Partly, we did increase the landing fees, only about 25%. So maybe the other 25% account for increase in volume, possibly. I could look more into that, but that's certainly what it sounds like. The general aviation landing fee surcharge is also up 25%, kind of aligned with the possible increase in activity there.
Yeah, it's a pretty significant increase. I was just wondering if that was additional landings or if the rates.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a combination, maybe 50-50 of both.
Okay. Thank you.
Are those landing fees just for aircraft over 12,500 pounds, or what's the cutoff for when we charge a landing fee or don't?
Don't remember exactly the weight. I know it's like 10,000 pounds for the commercial.
Just for GA. It's just larger
General
airplanes for
aviation.
GA. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're pulling it up right
Okay.
now.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Sorry.
It's okay. That's what we're here for.
So the billing rules that Vector follow, so departures of aircraft 10,000 pounds or more are charged at a rate of $3.99 per 1,000 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then departures of aircraft flying Part 135 that are under 10,000 pounds are also charged a rate of $3.99 per 1,000 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So your Part 91, just general aviation aircraft under 10,000 are not charged, but if it's a charter operation, then it would be.
Understood. Thanks.
Yeah, I was mostly curious if it was just a lot more operations or if it was the rate. It sounds like maybe it's both.
One of the issues that may have helped us to catch back up with some of that is during some of the previous year's flooding, we had some of the system that was down for a period of time, so we may have lost some during that portion of time as well.
Thank you.
Commissioners, Vice Chair Glazier.
Are you guys seeing any level of delinquency when it comes to the leases or the rents that we're collecting? Anything meaningful? No specific names, of course, but just curious in general.
It looks like everybody's pretty on top of it, and we do follow up when they fall behind. Have you noticed any particular?
I know there's two that I know of, but it has not rise to me getting involved yet, so accounting's taking care of it.
Any additional comments from the commissioners? Clarifications? All right. Mo, have you received any more comment forms? The group? All right. All right. Commission, any other discussion requests on the presentation? All right, we'll move on. We have no motion or vote for this presentation, so we're going to call on Director Hastert again to make the introduction for the Santa Barbara Airport Master Plan update.
Thank you, Chair Houghton and Commission members. We have our team here to provide a presentation, but I just thought I would kick it off. So I wanted to just start with, you won't hear a lot about drainage in the master plan, but I wanted to let you know that we are doing a drainage master plan that was a project that was pulled out of the 2017 master plan. So that work is ongoing, including we are also looking at sea level rise adaptation plan as well with a grant. So we won't be talking much about that. So if you have questions about flooding and everything, I'm happy to deal with that kind of separately. We don't talk about that too much in this presentation, but definitely looking at drainage and future planning for climate change at the airport, especially with the recent issues that we've been having. Up on the screen, you will see our guiding principles that we used to scope out this master plan process. And so this was specific to Santa Barbara Airport, hitting on all of the topics. I'm not going to go through them one by one, but we're always questioned about, did you look at sustainability when you talked about the master plan? And so the answer is yes, that was one of our guiding principles. So happy to answer any questions that you have about any of those, but really a comprehensive scope to coming up with the master plan for the Santa Barbara Airport, and a great team that we have working on that as well. So speaking of the team, internally, we have myself as the airport director. We have Ms. Sarah Iza, our airport development manager, Jessica Metzger, there she is, our project planner, Tiana Herrera, our senior engineering technician, and Brad Klinzing, our supervising engineer. And I can just say they've all been a pleasure to work with and have really put forward a lot of good information about our airport to our consultants, because they can't do their job without good back and forth with our airport staff. And then we do have a really good consultant group that we are working with, consisting of Mead and Hunt, who Corbett Smith is just about ready to take over and provide some presentation with us as the project manager. Hardy Bullock, who is also at the desk right behind here, is the deputy project manager. And Brian Moore, who is not with us here tonight. And then their sub-consultants, Rincon, who helps with some of the environmental, Unison Consulting with the financial, NV5 with some of the GIS information, and Walker Consultants for the parking elements of that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Corbett to go through the presentation, and staff will be here to answer any questions as well.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. My name is Corbett Smith, project manager with Mead and Hunt. I'm going to walk you through where we are with the master plan, talk about the recommended alternatives that we've come forward with at this point, some high-level cost estimates for a few of the big projects, and the noise contours associated with the 20-year forecast of the airport. So just to do a brief recap of the master plan timeline, we started with an inventory of everything on the airport. We conducted an environmental overview, figuring out where the significant environmental constraints are. We developed an aviation forecast for 20 years into the future, where we predict the airport will be. That aviation forecast is one of two components that's explicitly approved by the FAA. That was approved by the FAA at the time we submitted it. We then conducted a facility requirements analysis, which is essentially a gap analysis between the inventory and the 20-year forecasts, what needs to be improved in order to meet those 20-year forecasts. And then we developed a series of preliminary alternatives of ways to meet those facility requirements that we identified. We're now at the point where we're conducting the land use planning and financial feasibility portion of the master plan. Land use planning is primarily concerned with the noise analysis and an analysis of the land uses around the airport and how they may or may not be compatible with the 20-year noise contours. Financial feasibility is a component where we develop the rough order of magnitude costs. Then we'll also work with the airport to identify a capital improvement plan where the projects have specific years of implementations out through the 20-year planning period. During that next phase with the financial feasibility component, we'll be meeting with the FAA to sit down and talk about that 20-year capital improvement plan. And then finally, the master plan will wrap up with an update to the airport layout plan, which is the second component that's explicitly approved by the FAA. Throughout this entire master planning process, we've had a very robust stakeholder and public outreach process. Today, we concluded our 4th series of technical input committee meetings and community input committee meetings. They've been valuable stakeholders throughout the process. We've also had a number of decision maker hearings between City Council, Planning Commission, Airport Commission. We'll be doing Planning Commission again tomorrow. We have also had public outreach meetings. We'll be doing another public outreach meeting tomorrow. And we'll do another series of public outreach at the very end when we have the airport layout plan draft. And feel free to interrupt at any time if there's questions as I go through this. So I like to start these presentations with just a high-level overview of what a master plan is and is not. And it's important to think about as we're talking about this 20-year document. It is that, a 20-year document that looks forward in time. Airports often undertake updates to these as conditions warrant, or approximately every 5 to 10 years. It's a document that looks at the capital improvement projects and the land use compatibility associated with those. It is sponsored and partially funded by the FAA, and it needs to meet FAA standards for the long run to justify funding of specific projects coming out of the master plan. and it's focused on the long-term development potential of the airport. That's the end goal. And what it's not a business plan or a marketing plan. The airport has different mechanisms in place to work with businesses and marketers. It's not a wish list or a funding guarantee. Things need to be real, justifiable, and realistic. It's not a binding document. The airport can update these and make changes to the master plan or the airport layout plan as conditions warrant. It's not a document that sets rates or policies, and it's not an engineering level document or a rigid blueprint for development. This is a planning document, so a lot of the concepts that we'll be talking about today are very high level, big picture planning, reservation of space of where things may go on the airport if conditions warrant. So one of the first big questions that we had to tackle in this master plan was, what is the ultimate runway condition at the airport? What is the ultimate runway configuration? On the left, in alternative 1 is essentially the status quo, a 3 runway system. On the far right, alternative 3, alternative we ultimately discarded, but a single runway system. Alternative 2, our preferred alternative and recommended alternative in the middle, is a 2 runway system where 1 runway would ultimately be closed. Now, there is a whole host of criteria from the FAA that establishes funding eligibility for runways. And the reason that alternative 2 is the preferred or recommended alternative is because SBA does not meet the eligibility criteria for the FAA to continue funding 3 runways. That does not mean that the airport has to go out tomorrow and close the runway. It means that the airport will not be eligible to receive funding from the FAA to continue operating and maintaining that runway. So our engineers took a high-level estimate of the next 20 years of maintenance costs to maintain a 3rd runway, and they equate to about $9 million over the 20-year planning period. That's what it would cost the airport to continue maintaining a 3rd runway without FAA support. It's our opinion that the $9 million that it would cost to maintain that 3rd runway are better suited for other development projects throughout the planning period, and that sufficient capacity and operational needs are met with a 2 runway system. So now we're going to talk a bit about the long-term concepts for the terminal. On the left side of the screen is a summary table of the aviation activity forecasts that the FAA approved. And although you probably can't read it, the number in that red box is 878,000 annual enplanements. Enplanements are strictly passengers boarding an aircraft. So if you want to think about total passengers traveling through the airport, you roughly double that number for total passengers. So we're projecting that 878,000 enplanements to occur around year 2041, the end of the planning period. But as this is a planning document, it's prudent to look at long term, even beyond that 20 years. If the demand continues as this airport has experienced, what would it look like if those numbers are exceeded? So in our facility requirements chapter, we developed what's called planning activity levels, specifically PAL 3, which represents a number beyond our 20-year forecast, 1.1 million annual enplanements. So we asked if that number came near to reality by the end of the 20-year planning period, if you were approaching it or even triggering it, what would the airport need to do to accommodate that number beyond the 20-year forecast? And the answer from that analysis is a terminal with a total of 8 gates and an additional 34,000 square feet of terminal space beyond the terminal improvement projects underway today. The 8 gates is not in addition to, that is a total of 8 gates. And as we'll talk about on the next slide, our recommended alternative, or at least land use reservation for planning purposes, is ultimately essentially a new concourse that would accommodate 8 new gates. It would replace the gates at the existing terminal and meet that big picture planning number of 1.1 million in-plane passengers. There's a lot going on in this graphic, so I'll talk a bit about the different colors and what they represent. The dark blue on the sort of left side of the graphic is the existing terminal footprint. The light green surrounding and adjacent to that is the terminal improvement expansion underway today. The blue parking area is the Southfield redevelopment project, and then the orange rectangles are what this new concourse may, in very broad shapes, look like beyond the 20-year period. This concept only works with the long-term closure of runway 15 left, 33 right. We did look at alternatives that would meet this 8-gate demand without that closure, and it is possible. It's just very constrained. It would essentially wipe out almost all of that Southfield redevelopment and further constrained an already constrained terminal area. So on the theme of the terminal, one of the areas where we also identified some improvements are along the terminal curb front for circulation. The recommended alternative is really a combination of 3 different alternatives, but combined together equal our recommended alternative, and that is to increase signage, marking, wayfinding, and messaging to further increase the utilization of an underutilized portion of the curb frontage. We'd also recommend separating the inner and outer curbs, one dedicated for pickup, one dedicated for drop-off, and some modifications to the short-term parking lot to have a dedicated area for TNCs, transportation network companies like Uber or Lyft, to do their pickup and drop-offs. This could all be accomplished at a estimated pretty reasonable cost of about $50,000 for signage and marking improvements, not including design fees. And then on the side of general aviation, the forecast that I mentioned for the 20-year period projects that there will be approximately 44 new general aviation aircraft that make Santa Barbara Airport their home. And we've developed a range of alternatives for hangars to accommodate those aircraft throughout the 20-year planning period. The designs on the screen accommodate more than 44 aircraft, and that was on purpose by design so that the airport has flexibility to respond to the demand as it materializes. There's a range of large box hangars as well as small T hangars. The T hangar graphic in the left bottom portion of the graphics assume the closure of 15 left, 33 right. Those could not be constructed there without that closure, as it's under the runway protection zone currently. And cost estimates for these range quite a bit depending on what is constructed and in the order and combination of, but somewhere in the range of $17 to $34 million. Then we also identified a need to increase the fuel capacity at the airport. There's been instances of supply chain disruptions and shortages of fuel. So the airport could easily double its fuel storage capacities using the current location of the fuel farm. It's really well suited to accommodate expansion. The tanks could essentially be added using the same loop road delivery system. We do recommend some improvements to the automotive or vehicle access gate where the trucks enter to allow some flexibility for how they maneuver around the gate area. Long term, the airport could also easily accommodate sustainable aviation fuel in this same area in addition to or in substitution for one of these 100 low lead or Jet A tanks. And our planning level cost estimates for this improvement would be about $8.7 million. And then another interesting and exciting technology that's changing the aviation market is eVTOLs, which is electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. We identified in both the forecast chapter and the facility requirements chapter that Santa Barbara Airport is uniquely suited to potentially receive that demand and that service from these eVTOLs transporting 4 to 6 passengers. So as this is a planning document, we wanted to make sure that there was somewhere on the airport that could be designated to accommodate them, and that is a vertiport. We looked at 6 different alternate sites around the airport for where this could be located. Alternate site 5, which is on the screen, was the only one that met all of the FAA's siting criteria. So that is our recommended alternative. We estimate this could be constructed for approximately $2.7 million. Coming out of the community input meetings, we also had some requests for land use analysis related specifically to that vertiport. So there's a lot going on the screen, but all of the colors in the very far background is the city of Goleta's land use off airport property. We then also have the trapezoids running left and right that are the approach and departure paths, which are design standards set by the FAA. And then in green circles, we have the resulting noise contours that would result from this airport coming online, this vertiport coming online. And we'll talk a bit more about noise in a moment, but at this point, we didn't identify any major conflicts. We did receive some comments earlier in the meeting today that there is another residential overlay zone that we should take a look at, so we will do so. And then auto parking was another area where we identified a need for improvements, and that need is twofold. One is to accommodate the demand in traveling passengers that will increase throughout the 20-year period, but also in the long-term plan that the airport has to close the remote economy parking lot. We would need to combine that demand with the passenger demand, and that equates to about 1,250 parking spots that the airport would ultimately need to accommodate by the end of the 20-year planning period. We looked at a variety of sites. The only site that is viable for that many parking stalls would be a 3-level parking garage immediately south of the existing terminal building. So on the right-hand side of the screen is a rough concept of what that floor plan might look like for that parking garage. This is one of the more expensive projects, estimated to come in around $45 million. And finally, when we take all those recommended alternatives, we put them together, we get this preferred development concept. This is a piece of what will ultimately go on the airport layout plan for submittal and approval by the FAA. Additionally, there are some taxiway geometric changes throughout the airport. With the closure of 15 left, 33 right, there would ultimately be a new parallel taxiway constructed between what is now the parallel runways, but it would be in support of the remaining crosswind runway. There are also some geometric changes associated with the connectors to runway 725 that would be removed or reconfigured to comply with FAA geometric standard requirements. A lot of those are driven by safety concerns where the FAA wants pilots to make specific and deliberate turns before they enter a runway environment, also to eliminate direct access from the apron to the runway environment. And then we have the noise discussion. So there's a lot to cover on this slide. First and foremost is, what does this represent? This does not represent what people hear on the ground. This is noise contours in the specific metric that the FAA specifies as a policy line for analyzing compatible and incompatible land uses. So the annoyance factor of aircraft overflying homes is not reflected in these noise contours. But starting with the lines on the left, there is a black line, the black outer contour. That is the noise contour from the base year of the prior master plan, and it represents year 2011, which was the base year of that study. Moving to the contours associated with this master plan, the blue lines are the base year contours from this master plan update representing year 2021. And then the green dashed lines are the projected 20-year contours from this master plan representing year 2041. So you will notice that there is a difference between the prior master plan and this master plan effort. And the reason for that is really twofold. In the prior master plan, there was more operations in their base year of 2011 than we have in our base year of 2021 of this master plan. Part of the reason for that is the airline's general change in fleet utilization. So airlines specifically at Santa Barbara are bringing in larger aircraft, whereas in the 2017 master plan, specifically the 2011 base year of that plan, there was much more frequent but much smaller airline aircraft in this noise model. And going hand in hand with that fleet change is the change in aircraft technology. As these newer aircraft come online, they're more fuel efficient and they are quieter than the older aircraft that were flying at this airport 10, 15, 20 years ago. We also have some other changes in the noise contour. So I talked briefly about the noise associated with the vertiport, and that is the bulge there that's on the northeast corner of the noise contours. So that's again associated with the vertiport coming online and approximately 3,500 eVTOL operations per year using that vertiport. And that concludes my portion. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to Chris for conclusions. Yeah.
I guess I was curious about the proposal to basically move all the landing, or creating a new concourse and all the gates would be there. Why would that approach be beneficial over, continuing to use the current hangar for part of that and just having a smaller addition?
Sure. So, as I said, there is a narrative chapter that accompanies this entire presentation, which will be online on the airport's website in the next few weeks. And it contains all those other alternatives, such as continuing the terminal progression directly south. The answer is simply because this is a planning exercise and a space reservation concept. It's the most conservative as far as airfield utilization. If you don't end up going that way, that's fine. At the time those numbers are triggered, where we're approaching 1.1 million enplanements, the airport would likely undertake a similar process to what's going on today with the terminal improvement project, and do a comprehensive design of how this expansion might occur. So it may indeed be proven desirable that as a policy decision, the airport and the city wants to continue that flow. It would significantly impact the Southfield redevelopment project, as well as that potential location for the parking garage. So it's very constrained already in that quadrant. If you have the ability to move out west into the infield, it might be prudent to do so in the future.
What's the criteria to meet for FAA funding to fund that third runway 15 left, 33 right?
Good question. So there are two ways of meeting eligibility criteria for additional runways. One is on the basis of operations. So how many operations the airport actually experiences, and does the airport need another runway for capacity? The airport is barely reaching its threshold for 2 runways on that aspect. It is a long ways from needing 3 runways on purely a capacity justification. The other component is crosswind, an analysis of how often the wind conditions cross the primary runway 725 at a speed that doesn't allow aircraft to land there. That number is 95%. So if the wind conditions are such that less than 95% of the time 725 has favorable wind conditions, then you are eligible for a crosswind runway. At Santa Barbara, the conditions are such that for all the categories of aircraft, there is 95% or greater coverage on runway 725. So it's a combination of crosswind coverage and total operations.
And do our projections for operations into the future indicate that we might reach that threshold at some point in the distant future?
Unlikely. And in this 20-year period, that end year is where I mentioned we are just barely at the threshold for the second runway.
Mm-hmm.
And it would take, just off the top of my head, about 80,000 to 100,000 more operations beyond the forecast operations to trigger a third runway.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Commissioners, any additional questions for Mr. Smith? Vice Chair Glazier?
I know we've had some discussions in the past about updating the FBOs. Was that taken into consideration in this at all?
Yes, good question, thank you. So there is that FBO redevelopment plan that's moving forward outside of the master plan. I actually have it on the preferred development concept. That's the purple area in the northeast quadrant. So in the alternatives chapter, we do provide some potential layouts for those areas. We're not making recommendations on exactly how the airport should do that development, as it'll be a negotiation between the airport and those FBOs that lease the area. But it is a assumption that the master plan makes, is that part of the general aviation demand for services, ramp space, storage, would also be accommodated by those FBO leaseholds. So a double approach from the hangars that I showed in the development concepts, as well as services and hangars provided by the FBOs.
If I might add to that, this master plan is putting together a lot of those different studies, as I mentioned, drainage, all of that. So the FBO relocation is definitely a part of that. But the one thing that Corbett's team looked into in a little bit more detail was that taxiway geometry, and one of the potential fixes for one of the issues we have. We're also solving a problem with the FBO relocation as well, and that's, you can see a relocation of that taxiway that splits the 2 different sides for the FBOs on that northeast corner, so that we will be shifting that taxiway to the west a little bit, so it'll evenly split those 2 parcels and provide good access for both FBOs.
And if those changes are made and we do update those FBOs, do you still feel that the compounded annual growth rates are still 0.2%, 0.3%, or do you feel that they might maybe tick up a little bit as a result?
So specifically the forecast growth rates in the forecast document, those are pure demand projections, not reflective of facilities that may or may not be added to the airport. That's what we project demand to be throughout the period based on trends in general aviation, population, just overall trends. So they aren't based on whether or not you do or do not develop the FBO redevelopment area.
May I add something?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we had our FBO redevelopment consultant also perform a GA forecast, and we consulted with Mead and Hunt and compared notes, and they were very, very similar. So.
Commissioners, any additional questions, clarifications for Mr. Smith?
One other question about the eVTOL area. It looked like that was maybe in the present location of the FedEx terminal and the coastal aviation, that area there. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
It is just north of those hangars,
Mm-hmm.
in an area that's a parking lot, an automotive parking lot right now. So it wouldn't, and the airspace surfaces, let me go back to that one.
Yeah.
The airspace surfaces, it's designed so that the airspace surfaces are clear of all those existing hangars.
So it wouldn't require displacement of any existing
No.
structures or tenants?
No.
Yeah, okay.
Seems that it may interfere with our plans for the General Western Aero hangars. Has that been considered?
So the General Western Aero hangars are just north of there. You can kind of see them on that map. If you go to the previous drawing, I think it shows it maybe
yeah.
even a little bit better. Yes. So it still would not cut off access for potential uses of those hangars, either from the land side, if they were to be developed into, say, a museum or something like that, or from the air side. It's a lot going on in that area, but we're not ruling out any of the current uses.
Thank you.
Would there be any kind of indoor terminal area around the eVTOL, or what would the access be like for users, passengers?
So the green rectangle there is actually what we're calling a small passenger building.
Uh-huh.
However, these companies intend to use it when or if they come to the airport. We designed that site so that it would be clear of the airspace surfaces. They could install a modular unit of some type if they wanted to have passenger facilities. And we haven't not developed an access plan to this site. Ultimately, that would be accomplished as an interested party wanted to come construct a vertiport and start operations. But presumably, they could use the existing access roads in the area.
And these aircraft do not hold a lot of passengers, and the range is not huge, and the charging time is significant right now. Obviously, as technology develops, it'll become quicker. So that's why you see two kind of pads off of the main landing area for recharging, but it's not likely to have a huge utilization with hundreds of aircraft a day, just due to the capabilities of those aircraft.
And what do you see as the timeline, the horizon for this kind of development?
There's
demand, I guess, is the question. Yeah, when would the demand?
There's a number of manufacturers that are working through certification with FAA right now. They have vehicles that are operational and flying. They just haven't got that certification yet. A number of companies have been working with airports around the country to build these facilities currently to accommodate that demand. So it is not that far off in a general sense. How far off it is for Santa Barbara is anybody's guess. As this is a planning document, the intent is just to have a site identified for if and when that does happen.
Thank you.
And as we continue to develop to the south, has this taken into consideration any sea level rise adaptation plans or anything?
So that is ongoing now. Sarah, maybe you can.
Thank you. That's a great question. So I may ask Ms. Metzger to address that question. She's also managing the sea level rise adaptation plan.
Yes, thank you. That's a very good question. So our sea level rise vulnerability study is actually coming to us for an internal review this month. And then we hope to do public meetings on that, which will include this commission, in the next 2 months after that, so April and May. And after we do this vulnerability study, then we'll look at how do we mitigate these things and what's the most important way everything, and go from there.
Okay. Director Hastert, do you have a couple wrap-up slides here? That
I
see?
do,
I
yes.
thought so. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about budget and financial information. So obviously, the next steps is looking more in depth at the Airport Capital Improvement Program. That Airport Capital Improvement Program is funded through the FAA. So these are the grants that you hear about for our projects that we receive that are eligible. Typically, the FAA covers 90.66% of the project. Sounds like a weird number, but it has to do with state apportionment and other things. So it's 90% plus a little bonus for commercial service airports. And then specific project funding as identified at the time of design. So as we move forward with these projects, then we look into the funding in a little bit more detail. Just wanted to also highlight on the sustainability impact. So obviously, the Santa Barbara general plan mission statement is living within our resources, and so that is something that the 2017 master plan and this update support with sustainable design policies and practices. So as was already mentioned in the question, sea level rise, electrification, updates for recycling, reuse, waste, all of that is incorporated into this planning document as well. And so we did not lose touch with who we are here in Santa Barbara and our impact for sustainability. And then ultimately, we do have a recommendation that the Airport Commission receive a briefing from the Master Plan Update Project, and that's the conclusion of the presentation.
Thank you, Director Hastert. It's a big nut. A lot of effort by staff and our consultants, and on behalf of the commission, I'm going to say, I think you'll all agree that we appreciate your efforts very much. Thank you. And on that note, there's no motion or vote for this
Chair?
item.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Mr. Kiriako just joined us. I don't know if we wanted to.
Councilmember Kiriako.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if we wanted to hear from him or not.
You're welcome to address the group if you wish.
Sure.
Is that what you were going to say?
No, that's a point of order.
Good evening. I'm sorry I'm about as late as you can possibly be. Sometimes as a council member, you get double, triple, or quadruple booked, and I had to be at a county-wide meeting. But I did want to let you know that Project Connect is continuing to move forward in the city of Goleta, pending some final things that need to be worked out related to Measure A. The interim striping project that we've talked about, where we'll be rebuilding Hollister right through the Hollister corridor in Old Town Goleta, leading to the airport, adding bike lanes, doing some economic development opportunity. That is starting this summer. That is ready to go. That is happening. That's all I got for you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. On that note,
Mr. Chair, I wanted to raise a point of order I probably should have raised earlier back on the consent calendar. I believe it was declared approved, but I don't believe we actually had a voice vote on that. I'm afraid when Mo were to go back and
I can go back. We did get a second, but I didn't see the unanimous.
Right.
yeah, I just counted hands.
Okay.
Should we back up?
I think just for clarification, we should probably go ahead and do a voice vote just to.
Okay.
So we had a motion and a second to approve the consent. Do we have a call for the vote?
All right, so I think I'll start from the beginning. So I'm going to ask for a motion for approval of the consent calendar.
I will move to approve the
Right.
consent
Second.
calendar.
First by Commissioner Miller, and is it seconded by Commissioner Grabman?
Glazer.
Glazer, Vice Chair Glazer. And I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All are in favor, no opposed, so we are unanimous.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for catching that. That's important. And on that note, it's 7:19 p.m. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.